Well, I've been doing this for a long time, I think about 10 or 12 years, and it's a pleasure every single year. And I don't have any more gray hairs than I had before, but I think I got a few in the last week or so. Let me welcome you, and I'm supposed to say it out loud so that the videographer gets this. Welcome to the 2017 B'nai B'rith Capital Area Holocaust Essay Contest Award Ceremony. And we have a number of people and one institution at least to thank. And if this works, you'll see. No. We have a number of people to introduce. Unfortunately, Lisa Sternlicht is not able to be here. She's traveling. And Bino Sternlicht, her husband, who's been a great sponsor. The two of them have been a great sponsor for us for a good number of years, and I would say 20 to 30 years. This contest has existed. Bino died, I would estimate, about 4 years ago. We have our judging panel members. Is Peter Bent here? I don't think I saw him. Evelyn Loeb, not here. Oh, you're here. There you are. And Patricia Luria? Not here. Okay. Sally is here. Sally Majid, there you are. And Jessica, you're somewhere. Oh, there you are. Randy is not only a judge, but a wonderful photographer. And he will be taking photographs for the FBI, I mean, for the, and Deborah Wine, are you here? No, and Ernie are not here. And Bill Perlman has coordinated our judging panel. He's right here. And he's probably received more grief from me than any of the other members. I tremendously appreciate everyone. Rich Seiden, I see, and Ken Getnick are not here yet, from the Albany Gideon Lodge of B'nai B'rith. Arthur Merrims took care of our refreshments. We have refreshments at the table in the back. What I would call light refreshments, but I see that there are some dark refreshments as well. We have Jim Lewis, and Tom is in the back here. Jim and Tom and the crew, there's somebody else, I don't really know your name, are our videography crew, and we have been working with them. I gotta think we've probably worked with them for 20 years now, and we have tremendous appreciation for their accommodating us. We have certificates for each of the students from Kirsten Gillibrand. We have likewise from Paul Tonko and Phil Steck. Phil is probably going to be here. I'm sure he's going to be here. He's guaranteed it. But so far that hasn't happened. I think somebody's trying to get in. So we thank all of them. This is Phil last year actually speaking at our event. And he has said that he'll be willing to make some comments this year as well. Oh, we were told we would hear the bell. Yes, and speaking of hearing bells, please put your phasers on stun and your cell phones in the off position. So, as I say, Phil Steck eventually will be around to... He's here. He's here? Oh, there he is. I see him. Bill, are you available to... Is Bill... Maybe he's already done that. Okay. So Phil Steck will be in a moment. And... you know, we can do what the legislature does. We can just change the time, Phil. Good to see you. We will have the readings of essays, and following the readings of essays, we will hopefully have a group photograph. And as each of the students and teachers comes up, we will give each of you a package of wonderful documents, most of which will be also visible at the front. And one of the really important documents in there, oh, well, okay, these are the names of our winners and their affiliations with schools and the teachers that sponsored them. And we have we want to thank our sponsors as well, which is, I think I've mentioned the Sternlicht, Bino and Lisa Sternlicht, but they have a fund that is administered by Federation, the Jewish Federation of Northeastern New York, and they have been very nice to put up with us as well each year here. And the Brotherhood of Congregation Gates of Heaven, and the Albany and the Schenectady units of B'nai B'rith. We thank them all, and we thank all of the people who have made this a possibility for us, the individuals who have donated money and time and care and everything else. We appreciate that tremendously. We have tried to get some visibility. We have a website which the students, I think, have probably visited it. If parents or teachers would like, they should also visit the website. The videographers will be producing DVDs for a lot of people, each of the judges, each of the students, each of the teachers, each of our sponsors will be getting a DVD. But one of the things you have to do well, all right, we'll go to that later on then. This is a very special year for the Holocaust essay contest because if it ever seemed more relevant, this is the year when it is more relevant. We've had a rancorous election season, and things have changed in our country, and a lot of people are worried about that. And we've been running this contest for a very long time based upon the premise that the students that we see today are the leaders and the voters that we will see tomorrow. And after all these years, a lot of them are already out there. Those are our legacy. And we hope we've trained them to be vigilant about the circumstances of our country. In any case, I am disturbed to say that this is a more relevant year for the Holocaust essay contest than ever before, in part because of the similarity of conditions that are generated in the United States now, including statements coming from high places that have incited violence and civil unrest, that have targeted specific ethnic groups, that have stimulated acts of intolerance and bullying in schools. And that is one of the reasons why Phil Steck, Assemblymember Phil Steck, was kind enough to contact all of the superintendents of school systems in our contest area, which is 12 counties, to promote our completely non-commercial and free contest as an anti-bullying kind of activity. We've seen executive orders and government actions, again, targeting specific ethnic groups. We've seen fake news. We've seen what they call alt or alternative facts. We've seen attacks on science and the media being called the enemies of the people. We've actually had proposals and actual events that would separate young children from their non-citizen asylum-seeking parents. And last week, a judge, whose name might be Reinhardt, in the federal court, opined that he was not able to save one family from that event. And he was very bitter about it. And he says 3 U.S. citizen children will have to choose between, I can't believe this, their father and their country. This is what has come about in this country now. The similarities are quite overt. This individual has resigned from the inner circle in the White House. But in happy times, he was here. Oh, gotta find this yellow in the spotlight here. In a little family picture with his wife, wearing and commemorating his father's Nazi organization from Hungary during World War II. I did not use the word neo-Nazi. And the context of this photograph is also very relevant because it's at the inaugural ball on the 20th of January for the President of the United States. This year's essay topic, which as I've said is very relevant, is stated here. I won't read it. When I was a teacher, which was 1,000,000 years ago, it seems, I used to occasionally assign essays, and the kids would always ask, well, how long does it have to be? And my answer was always as short as possible. And of course, they probed me further because they're good students. They said, well, how short could it be? I said, well, 1 word. But you have to pick it very carefully. I was wrong, but I'm a scientist. And English is really my second language. In writing essays, the passive voice should be shied away from. And if you're writing an essay, the active voice should be used. You should use the active voice. You should be active. And that is a metaphor for life itself. You are living your life. Be active. Be an activist. Be an activist at the polls. Be an activist in your actions, in your words. Live by example. That's my advice for people who are eventually going to be responsible for making this place work. I am tempted to say enough said, but I know that that's not true, but I don't have any more time, but Phil does later. You have one very important document based on another premise, which is that lawyers run the world, not us. And so this is a legal contract, so to speak. It doesn't have any small print. It just says we can use the photographs and videos and whatever we do today if we want to publicize the award ceremony, publish the essays, whatever. There's no small print. At the bottom, we have a special motivator, which is a place where you can put your address. And when you do put your address there, that's where the DVD will come to your house or wherever you want, and it's totally free. So when you receive these packages, please sign it. If you're a parent or guardian, please sign it and bring it back at some point to me. And Kylie, where's Kylie? I'm sorry? Oh, we heard that Kylie was coming. Okay. I see. Okay. And Michelle, are you, you're here. Okay. Michelle, how would you like to read Kylie's essay? That's what I said. Would you read her essay? So you get both packages.
All right.
This is the essay in the front.
Thank you very much.
And I will keep out of your way.
Good. Wow, I get to public speak impromptu. This is great. All right. Kylie wrote, "The Holocaust was a very tragic time in world history. It began when Hitler rose to power in Germany in the 1940s. During this time, Jews were being harassed and killed because Hitler wanted an all-white race. There are few survivors left, and the ones that are alive are getting older and may have little time left to share their stories with younger generations. The Holocaust was an awful time in history, and we need to take action now to make sure we preserve the survivors' stories and memories before it's too late. It is important that we remember the Holocaust for generations to come. If we don't remember the atrocities of the Holocaust, we may repeat the same mistakes. For example, the Germans followed someone who was hateful and demeaning to others based on their race. They were very discriminatory and thought that one race was better than others. It is important that we learn from these mistakes and don't judge people based on their race or what they look like. It is also important that we stand firm in doing what we believe and that we don't follow others just because that is what everyone else is doing. Lastly, we should remember the Holocaust to honor the people that lived through it and those that lost their lives. There are few survivors left with many stories that we need to preserve for the generations to come. One way that we do this is by creating a day of remembrance for when the Holocaust began. On this day, we could honor the many lives that were lost by having special activities in our schools, museums, and even in our homes. In our schools, there could be a retelling of Holocaust survivors' stories, which would better help students understand how dreadful and terrifying the Holocaust really was. In our homes, we could Skype a survivor or try to meet a survivor to listen to their stories and learn from lessons that we could share with others. In museums, there could be virtual reality stations where a guide teaches you about the Holocaust, and then you live like you were actually there. This would be frightening, but it would give a good sense of what it would have been like to live through the Holocaust. Another idea for museums is having a video station. There would be set time, a visitor could Skype with a survivor and ask questions about their experience, giving them a first account of these times. As these years pass, there are fewer and fewer survivors left with stories and memories to share. Therefore, we need to take action in our schools, museums, and homes to preserve their memory and honor those who lived during these horrible times and the ones who didn't make it through. It is also important to share these stories with generations to come so they don't make the same mistakes that they were making during the Holocaust.
Thank you very much. And Phil, do you have something in addition? Michelle, the certificates that are being given out are
Well, I have a
signed.
certificate for everyone who was awarded.
Yeah, okay. We have certificates from Paul Tonko's office and Kirsten Gillibrand's office. That's in the package. And you have a certificate for, Michelle, do you want to accept that for Kylie? I don't have a picture of Phil's certificates. And Rich Seiden just walked in. I was trying to introduce you before in absentia, but now you're actually here, so welcome from the Gideon Lodge of B'nai B'rith. Our next presenter is Andrea Lurie. Hi, Andrea. If you could come up with your teacher, please. Brenna, where are you? You have your essay over there? All right, so Brenna, you can hold, come on up. You can hold these for the meantime. No, well, that's only if necessary. And by the way, I actually forgot to mention that, you know, it looks very formal, but actually, you know, this is very informal, and nobody should think of this as anything but a good time. There's no pressure on anyone. We're trying to just enjoy this, and if you're a student and you're not accustomed to speaking publicly, Don't worry about it. It's frightening all your life, not just now.
Okay, so I can take a quick picture of her?
Of course.
I have to tweet that for the school, so.
And we do have one certificate for each student, one certificate for each teacher, and another certificate for display in the school.
Good evening, everyone. The Holocaust was one of the most horrific tragedies that humanity has ever faced. Oh, thank you.
Excuse me, could you begin again, because now you...
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Really loud, Andrea,
Okay.
really loud.
The Holocaust was one of the most horrific tragedies that humanity has ever faced. From 1933 to 1945, 11 million innocent people perished because of the Nazi regime in the Holocaust alone. Over 60 million people died in the Second World War, either indirectly or directly because of Adolf Hitler and his desire for conquest. Even though the Holocaust happened more than 70 years ago, it has left a lasting impact in our world that resonates with billions of people today. As the years go by, less and less Holocaust survivors are with us, but even as they pass away, their memory lives on through their writing, their families, and their testimonies. These accounts of their triumph over suffering must be preserved for many years to come, for the next generations of their families and for all others. The suffering of these survivors is not only relevant in the context of their time, rather it is relevant for every single individual that has been faced with persecution, hatred, and turmoil. Their lessons are valuable and timeless because they demonstrate the need to eradicate ignorance and intolerance. Our world today shares many parallels with the world of Adolf Hitler. In light of the recent presidential election, hate crimes and hate speech has been on the rise in America. Anti-Semitic threats have been directed towards synagogues and Jewish communities. Jewish graves have been desecrated, and Holocaust denial graffiti has been seen on holy temples. These actions are eerily similar to what occurred early on in the establishment of the Third Reich. At first, the vandalization of Jewish property in synagogues became more and more common. Anti-Semitic propaganda was widespread throughout German media, including magazines, newspapers, and movies. Slowly yet steadily, the persecution escalated to acts of violence, deportation, and finally, mass extermination in death camps. Unfortunately, anti-Semitic conspiracy theories have been circulating in alt-right media. Holocaust deniers are starting to be more vocal once again, even with the abundant amount of evidence that the Holocaust occurred from numerous kinds of sources. The lessons of the Holocaust are needed in times like this to refute the deniers and to teach others of cultures and religions different from theirs to encourage diversity and acceptance. Another parallel in our world is the civil war in Syria. It has become a terrible humanitarian crisis which has caused the displacement of millions of refugees, the murderous rampage of the Islamic State, and political distress across the world. The Syrian refugees are similar to the Jewish refugees that had tried to find sanctuary outside of their homeland so many years ago. They too face ignorance and discrimination from America. We turned our backs on the hundreds of thousands of refugees whom we could have potentially saved from the horrors the Nazis committed. As a nation, we must learn from these mistakes and put an end to the genocide occurring in Syria. We must put an end to the insidious prejudice against innocent Muslims, the anti-Semitism that is creeping into our society, and the lack of knowledge people have when it comes to the Holocaust. The testimonies of the survivors need to be taught not only in schools, but to people of all ages. Learning compassion instead of intolerance and hatred is the only way to keep history from repeating itself.
Great job. Thank you very much. Oh, we have one more from, yeah. I also meant to introduce our intern. We have an intern who could not be here today, and I had it in my mind to introduce her in person, but Danielle Haft is a student at the University at Albany and has been extremely helpful in helping this to come about. These are the additional certificates. I Don't, all right, and now, is Grace, hi, Grace. And Dennis Frank and Frank Adamo, come on up. Yeah, come on up. Let's see, we have, come on up there. You brought your essay or no?
No.
Okay, no, that's fine, I've got one right over here. I know the students pray for me not to have one, but I always do, and this could be hers. Now, come on up, we'll get a photograph here, and you can hold these, one is for you guys and one is for Grace, and thank you very much, and I think you just keep you close to the mic and you'll be all set.
Societies who remember past tragedies are less likely to repeat them. Preserving the Holocaust's memory for future generations will...
Let's try this a little.
She's good.
All right, I'm sorry. Okay.
Move it back a little bit. Okay.
Preserving the Holocaust memory for future generations will help them understand its significance and benefit from its lessons. Aiding our children to reach this milestone can be accomplished by including the Holocaust more into our education and culture and applying lessons to modern situations. The primary way to guard the Holocaust's memory is through education. Educators should include it into curriculum spanning every grade in school. Regularly and thoroughly taught information helps with the learner's retention. Students will realize that because the Holocaust is discussed often, it must be significant. Teaching the Holocaust repeatedly will additionally break down any taboos surrounding it. Denying the Holocaust's existence will be difficult. Additionally, including the Holocaust more into our culture will help future generations understand its significance. This incorporation could include supporting and funding Holocaust memorials and museums, and creating new Holocaust-related books, films, and art. We can expand our trove of Holocaust-themed media by telling Nazi-era stories in alternative media forms. Sometimes kids can develop a bored attitude towards information taught in schools, so exposure outside of a formal learning setting could reduce apathetic feelings. Similar genocides have happened around the world since the Holocaust, proving its relevancy. Consider South Sudan, where its dysfunctional government sponsors racially based crimes. The parallels between this and the Nazi Holocaust are clear. South Sudanese leaders cruelly mistreat their people, especially in the Darfur region. Education about other genocides, like the current one in South Sudan, will aid to maintain the Holocaust's relevancy. Our children could benefit from the Holocaust lessons even if the message's applicability was proven. One lesson is to always speak up for others, even if you are not the one abused. Sexism, racism, anti-Semitism, and multiple other forms of bigotry are present in modern society. If our children can be aware of these intolerances and use lessons from the Holocaust to counter them, they will have advanced towards creating a more tolerant atmosphere. People applied the lessons to speak up for others twice recently to public benefit. The most subscribed YouTuber, a man with immense influence over teens, created multiple videos with anti-Semitic messages and imagery. These include Nazi salutes, swastikas, and paying people to hold up a sign reading "Death to all Jews." He was called out by the media for his hatred and lost lucrative marketing deals. In the other situation, people were posting photos from the Holocaust Memorial in Berlin, showing disrespect to the hallowed grounds they stood upon. Once someone stood up and accused them of delegitimizing the Holocaust, most realized their insensitivity and apologized. The Holocaust lessons can be applied to our lives for great benefit. The Holocaust memory must be maintained so future generations can comprehend its importance and gain from its lessons. A strategy of comprehensive education improving its relevance will preserve the Holocaust memory. Every life is a story, and we cannot forget the stories of the people affected by the Holocaust.
Thank you very much. That was wonderful. We have a request from our photographer to move the microphone. So excuse me while I do that. And let me just also point out that in these packages that the teachers are getting, there are checks that are not announced, but these are checks that are going to the sponsoring teachers. And you know, don't spend it all in the same automobile dealership. This is battery operated, so if I trip on anything, it's only my feet. Charlotte? And Michelle, back up. I'll let you hold on to this here. And you already got one package. Another one.
As the last generation to overlap directly with the lifetimes of Holocaust survivors, it is important for us to ask as many questions as we can in order that their memories may become our own memories of them. That way, when we discuss the impact of the Holocaust, we can maintain with it a personal experience, helping to prevent future genocide. The more connected we are to the time period and its history, the better we will be able to commemorate it. We can accomplish this by using care in preserving first, second, and third-person experiences. The most reliable source we have for learning about the Holocaust is first-person experiences. Holocaust survivors are our primary resources for learning the details about the genocide that killed 6 billion Jews. Because this is the last generation to have direct access to these resources, we must take every opportunity to utilize them and allow them to speak to us. One of the most important duties of remaining Holocaust survivors is to continue sharing their personal stories. Once we have a personal connection with the tragedy, it will inspire passion in us and become our own memories. It is the responsibility of my generation to take record of these experiences and preserve them so that they can be used for reverence by future generations. Future generations won't have the opportunity to meet survivors in person, but being the generation most in tune with modern technology, we can help provide that illusion with filmed interviews, speeches, and documentaries. Accounts of the war's events are significant for keeping track of history in our minds, but reading and seeing personal, emotional stories of Holocaust survivors keeps track of history in our hearts and in our memories. Trude Silman, a Holocaust survivor, spoke of her friend and fellow Holocaust survivor John Chillag and their experience together at the Holocaust Survivor Friendship Association. Silman said, "We found ourselves among a group of people with whom we could share our past and be understood. This helped to ease our isolation, and at long last we were able to tell our stories, which had been repressed for so long." From this quote, it is evident that it is not only important for us to hear survivor stories as part of keeping in touch with history, but it is important for survivors to share their stories to improve their mental health after the trauma, and so that we can together ease their isolation. The second most reliable source we have for learning about the Holocaust is our second-person experience. Anyone who hears a personal account from a Holocaust survivor then becomes a secondary resource. It is the responsibility of my generation to become secondary resources, so that we can provide third-person experiences to future generations. who won't have access to first-person sufferers. It will be helpful to us as secondary resources to hear more than one account from multiple Holocaust survivors, so that we can get a better sense of the time period, as well as reinforcing the testimonies of the individual survivors, adding to their credibility. Hearing and learning about the Holocaust repeatedly only strengthens our memory and our knowledge of it. Each Holocaust survivor has their own story. Some were liberated from concentration camps, some escaped, and some were never officially captured but were constantly running. It is critical to the preservation of the memory of the Holocaust that we have record of and dedicate our minds to learning about each kind of story and its effects on the survivor. It is especially crucial that Holocaust survivors pass on their stories to their children. Second-generation survivors who don't learn their parents' history can be left more damaged than second-generation survivors who know what their parents went through. In her article about second-generation Holocaust survivors, Alex Kirsta spoke with second-generation Holocaust survivor Rita Goldberg. Kirsta wrote, "The need for children of the survivors to understand the origins of their own demons is," Goldberg believes, fueling research into their traumatic family histories. Goldberg, like many other second-generation survivors, was partially scarred by the preservation of the Holocaust as a taboo topic in her home. We should work with Holocaust survivors to be open about their experiences and end the cycle of trauma and guilt. The third most reliable source we have for learning about the Holocaust is our third-person experiences. Our third-person experiences include films, interviews, documentaries, and anything made with the intention of sharing knowledge with those who have not had first or second-person experiences. In order to produce this resource, one must have a second or first-person experience. Just as it is useful for us now to hear multiple accounts and have multiple records of first-person experiences, will it be helpful to future generations to have a multitude of resources providing third-person experiences. We should be using modern technology to our advantage, experimenting with different adaptations of film, photography, and other arts, and using them to eloquently express and display the Holocaust in the most impactful way. Taking full advantage of the rapidly expanding entertainment industry is probably the fastest way to spread awareness, reaching the widest audience. Claude Lanzmann, a filmmaker, created the Holocaust documentary, Shoah, in remembrance of the deaths of millions of Jews taken by the Nazis. Ed Vulliamy wrote an article based on his interview with Lanzmann about the production of the film. Lanzmann stated that the theme he was aiming to portray in the film was not survival, but it was a film about the dead and giving the dead a voice, since they cannot speak for themselves. When speaking of the Holocaust survivors he interviewed, he said, "Not one of them should have remained in order to testify. They were to die too. They succeeded in escaping their fate with an extraordinary mixture of courage, audacity, and luck. But in the film, they were not interested in talking about how they succeeded in escaping, how they survived. They were entirely conscious of the fact that they were the spokesman for the dead." Because of Lanzmann's work in producing the documentary, we now have a reliable resource to learn from for third-person experiences. This film will stand the test of time far better than any human with a first, second, or third-person experience. The more we have varying artistic adaptations documenting the Holocaust, the better the understanding future generations will be able to have of the severity of the Holocaust's events and of the impact it had on the world in the present and will have over all of the future. We are the last generation to overlap directly with the lifetimes of Holocaust survivors, making it increasingly important for us to document and record the events, effects, and impact of the Holocaust in as many ways as we can. By forming our own personal connection with Holocaust survivors, we can preserve their memory and, with our knowledge, to help to prevent future genocide. Using our first, second, and third-person experiences, we will be able to honor those who died during the Holocaust by keeping their memories and their stories alive through the many modern forms of artistic expression we have available to us today.
Wonderful, absolutely wonderful, thank you. And of course, we have a couple of more pictures here. And is Claire Pike available? Okay. Nicole? I'll let you have your essay, right? Yeah. Okay, so I'll let you go.
I think so. The Holocaust was a time of great despair and anguish for people all over the world. Hitler's infamous rule of Germany from 1933 to 1945 resulted in the death of 11 million people. 11 million people whose only crime was not conforming to the Nazis' strict regulations or beliefs. 6 million of these people were Jewish. The other 5 million consisted of Romas or Gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, the disabled, and many other groups that were deemed as insignificant. 1 million of those killed were children just like myself. Only many were even younger than I am. Imagining myself in a situation such as theirs, frostbite attacking my limbs, starvation eating away at my flesh, the constant smell of death in my nose, I know I would never survive. The Holocaust should be remembered for the torture and suffering it inflicted upon so many people. It was a huge relief when Hitler's planned genocide of all Jews stopped. Those who survived the torment were finally free. However, there are not many of those survivors left. The youth of today may be the last generation to overlap timelines with these resilient few. It's a daunting task to have to commemorate the lives of everyone who was killed and also those who survived from something as immense as the Holocaust. We have many things already in place that do just that. These include museums, memorials, books, and even learning about the Holocaust in school. The tools to fully understanding the significance of the Holocaust are in reach, but if people don't go to memorials or don't pay attention in class, it makes those tools useless. For today's society, helping future generations understand would have to include something that is part of their everyday lives: technology. Technology is everywhere you look, and its importance will only continue to grow. The easiest thing would be to simply put advertisements to museums and memorials up on various popular websites and apps. This way, it would be more widely known that these places are available to visit and experience. In-person experiences in places such as museums are probably most efficient in realizing the true meaning of things and fully understanding them. However, this may not be available to everyone. Another option would be to encourage people to download and listen to audio recordings of popular novels based on the Holocaust, such as The Diary of a Young Girl and Frank. Hard copy books are dropping more and more out of everyday life, turning into decor instead of entertainment. Audiobooks make it easier to multitask while enjoying a book, and also make it easier for the visually impaired to enjoy books as well. Additionally, still on the idea of books, e-readers like Kindles could come with a free, previously downloaded library of Holocaust books. This way, owners of e-readers wouldn't have to pay more money, but could read those books for free. Another major craze that is all over the world are streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and Amazon Prime. Many of these streaming services create and produce their own shows and movies. One or maybe more of these services could make a production based on the Holocaust. However, it shouldn't be a documentary because those can be boring and the average person doesn't enjoy listening and watching them. Instead, it should be a historical fiction, illustrating the story of someone who lived through the Holocaust. The movie or show could follow a survivor through the hardships and sorrows of living life during the atrocities caused by Hitler and his followers. By integrating the Holocaust into technology, upcoming generations could have easy access to tools helping them understand the significance the Holocaust holds. It's important for everyone to remember the Holocaust, not only for the pain it caused, but also for the lessons it can teach us all. The most important lesson to learn is that we can't let fear control us. Hitler and the Nazis put so much fear into the Germans that most people who did not agree with him were too scared to do anything about it. They were too scared to stand up for what they believed in. When fighting against the discrimination happening today, Richard Ogdenbein took to Facebook to describe what fear can do to us, writing, "Fear does bad things to us. It kills our empathy." This is as true now as it was back then. We are unable to care for others in need of support or in need of saving because we are afraid we will be the next to be targeted, made fun of, or even killed. Of course, there are those who defied the odds and found the courage to stand up for what they believed to be right. The article, The Boys Who Fought the Nazis, tells the story of three boys, Helmuth, Rudi, and Karl, who fought back against Hitler, standing up for what they believed in. They would counteract the lies being told to the Germans by leaving papers around town filled with honest information about Hitler, the Nazis, and the war that everyone blindly supported. This may have only had an impact within their own hometown, but it's better than standing by and watching it all happen, knowing there is something they could have done. The story of these boys teaches us that it's important to stand up for what we believe in and not simply follow those around us. We can also learn lessons from the millions who were trapped in concentration camps. Everything they had was taken from them. They were forced to starve and freeze. Yet still, many kept their optimism throughout their tortured lives. They held on to the thought of one day being liberated from the concentration camps and set out to survive a day at a time. Marion Blumenthal was in a concentration camp from age 4 and did not even remember much of her life outside of one. Her life story is written in the novel 4 Perfect Pebbles. Every day at the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, she would set out to collect 4 pebbles that perfectly matched. This was not only a way for her to pass the boring hours of the long day, but also a way to help her remain hopeful. Each of the pebbles represented a member of her family. One for her brother, Albert, one for her father, Walter, and one for her mother, Ruth. Marion believed that once she found all 4 perfect pebbles, that her family would never be separated no matter what happened. If she could remain optimistic in a horrific situation, then all of us can in our bad situations. By letting future generations have access to stories about the Holocaust through technology, they could learn many valuable life lessons along with gaining a better understanding of the Holocaust itself. The Holocaust is an event that will forever live in infamy. Remembered for the starvation, torture, and death it brought to millions of people who did nothing wrong, people that just wanted to live their lives. The pain these people endured should never be forgotten, should never be made fun of, and should be made known to all future generations, regardless of whether they are still living survivors. We can commemorate the lives of these millions of people, but in a way we may never understand. Only those with first-hand knowledge can truly comprehend the torment caused by Hitler and the Nazis. We have museums, memorials, books, and movies. Yet is there truly a way to ensure all the following generations will understand? The answer is no, but we still have to try. We have to try so that this part of history will never repeat itself.
Megan, there you are, and Michelle. So you need to be a little higher up there, huh? Is that okay?
Yep.
I think so. Okay.
Yeah. Preserving the memory of the Holocaust for generations to come is extremely important. The innocent lives that have been scarred by this horrific event in history deserve to be remembered for their tremendous struggle against the evil of Nazi genocide. As we may be the last generation to live alongside these direct Holocaust survivors, it is exceedingly important for us to be able to illustrate the consequences of racism in a world ravaged by war for future generations. Holocaust survivor Sarah Atzman once said, "I tell my story so that they might tell the next generation." Any effort to preserve this historical event, such as interviewing survivors, making an effort to honor Holocaust victims, or simply educating those around us about the Holocaust, could help to prevent the recurrence of a tragic event like the Holocaust. Mark Twain once said, "History doesn't repeat itself, but it does rhyme." The number of living Holocaust survivors is diminishing rapidly. These men and women represent our last few opportunities to retain information on the Holocaust directly from its victims. These survivors lived and breathed during one of the world's worst dictatorships. Hitler not only aimed to exterminate the Jewish community, but he also persecuted mentally and physically disabled people, gypsies, and Afro-Germans. Those who survived still suffer from the repercussions of the trauma brought on by the Holocaust. Elie Wiesel said, for the dead and the living we must bear witness. By interviewing survivors, we are able to keep record of these unfortunate experiences. Both the dead and the living deserve to have their stories told and their legacies honored. Shimon Peres once said, 6 million of our people live on in our hearts. We are their eyes that remember, we are their voice that cries out. The dreadful scenes flow from their dead eyes to our open ones, and those scenes will be remembered exactly as they happened. Many are unaware of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which takes place on January 27th. This day was set aside by the United Nations in an effort to better honor the victims of the Holocaust and to urge people to provide educational programs for the prevention of genocide. Bringing attention to this international holiday is one method to preserve the memory of the Holocaust. Commemorations are held at museums in Washington, D.C., New York City, New Orleans, and Paris. If this holiday were to become more widespread, the likelihood of Holocaust remembrance fading away would be lessened. It would also further guarantee that future generations will understand how significant this historical event truly was. Along with honoring these victims, educating ourselves on the Holocaust is crucial to contributing to the prevention of a future genocidal tragedy. Marcus Garvey once said, "A people without the knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots." Although most of us have been taught about the tragedy of the Holocaust throughout our lives, we should attempt to reach beyond what we are taught in the classroom. In order to further emphasize the significance of this event for the next generation, it is important to not only educate ourselves about the Holocaust, but to educate others as well. This can be accomplished through anything from writing a book based upon the Holocaust, holding a public event honoring its victims, or implementing an educational traveling Holocaust exhibit. An exhibit that visits schools within our community or even around the world. This would provide information about that time period and tell stories of survival and of hardship. The traveling exhibitions of the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum brings the history and lessons of the Holocaust beyond the museum's walls, reaching audiences from the smallest towns to the largest cities. Bringing this kind of exhibit to school settings would be an effective way to educate students on the gravity of this historical event. Holocaust survivor Leslie Measles was 17 years old when he and his family were captured and taken to a concentration camp. Although he and his family were liberated from the camp soon after arrival, Leslie still experienced inhumanity that no man should have to suffer through. He once said, "I tell my story so that it won't become your future." Telling the stories of survivors like Leslie is one of the most important steps that we can take toward preserving the memory of the Holocaust. The human lives that were deeply affected by the Nazi Party's inhumane treatment deserve to be remembered for their strength during this terrible time in history.
Thank you, very good, wonderful. Phil, you have another, Well, I'd like to reintroduce Phil, who will come up and have a few words to say. I will remind everybody that our website contains a reference to the University of Southern California, which has a project by Steven Spielberg, which is an oral history project in which he interviews Holocaust survivors. And those interviews are available online, and hopefully they will be for all time. Phil?
When I come to this event, I never know exactly what I'm going to say. It's actually inspired by Bob's comments and also by the students and what they said. So as I'm sitting there, I'm putting together my thoughts on this issue. As an elected official, I have a much different responsibility. So for Bob, he can point out the parallels between Donald Trump's rise and some instances from past history. I have an obligation to represent Trump supporters, to understand what motivates them in their thinking, and hopefully to persuade them that they are misdirected. I try very hard when I'm campaigning to do that and to understand that we have to find a common ground on these type of issues. So today, I was reading, as I do in the morning, some essays, and I read one. I'm going to be a little longer than normal because I was very moved by what was said. And I read an essay by a man named H.D.L. Greenway in the Boston Globe. And it's fairly short. I'm going to read it. Watching Donald Trump on TV whipping up his base of supporters at a rally in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, I had a sudden feeling I had seen this all before. I remembered a speech I had seen on YouTube. It was a speech Mussolini had given in Milan in 1932. I watched it again, and it was all there. The chin thrust, the pouts, the hand gestures, the adoring base cheering every word. He spoke of the might of his army, second to none, the injustices committed against us, and how he had stormed the old political class. There was even a complaint about the press that had drawn arbitrary conclusions to what he was saying. Mussolini's black shirts, his squads of roughnecks, were used to assaulting reporters they didn't like, and we just had a candidate for Congress who assaulted a reporter he didn't like. It got me thinking that nations, like people, can be changed very quickly according to how they are led. Today, Angela Merkel is thought of as the thoughtful, reasonable voice of the liberal order that has ruled the West since World War II. But within my memory, her country lived under two monstrous dictatorships, Hitler's and East Germany's. What makes Germany today different from the Germany of my childhood is leadership. In his 2004 book, The Anatomy of Fascism, Robert O. Paxton wrote that fascism did not die with the end of World War II, that its seeds were planted within all democratic countries, not excluding the United States. Japan today is our closest ally in the Far East, a more civilized and polite society you cannot find. Yet older Americans can remember when the Japanese played a very different role. The difference in the way the Japanese treated their prisoners of war in World War I and World War II demonstrates how quickly a country can change. In World War I, Japan was on the side of the Allies and treated the German and Austrian POWs it captured in Germany's Far East possessions with extreme respect and to the letter of the Geneva Convention. Then in the 1930s, Japan turned toward militarism and nationalism. In one generation, when World War II came, Japanese society had changed. When World War II broke out, the Japanese began treating their prisoners of war with extreme cruelty against every convention. The difference was leadership. Today, the Italians are an easygoing and generous people. But when fascism took hold in the early 1920s, Italy became belligerent and bullying. Its concentration camps for the native population in Libya and its use of poison gas became genocidal. And it was quick to join the Nazis in dreams of conquest. Mussolini was telling Italians they had to begin winning again. In his 2004 book, The Anatomy of Fascism, I repeated that somehow. No, it is a repeat intentionally. Wrote that fascism did not die with the end of World War II, that its seeds were planted within all democratic countries, not excluding the United States. According to Paxton, fascism was a form of political behavior marked by obsessive preoccupation with community decline, humiliation, or victimhood. Fascism was an affair of the gut more than of the brain. Or as R.J.B. Bosworth wrote in his 2005 book, Mussolini's Italy, border fascism, an obsession with borders and keeping the population pure, was always a key strain in the fascist melody, as was allowing the nation to stand tall again. All you needed was a charismatic leader, Mussolini, whom Paxton compared to the modern media era celebrity. 13 years ago, Paxton wrote that all that is required for a rebirth of fascism is polarization, deadlock, mass mobilization against internal and external enemies, and complicity by existing elites. It is, of course, conceivable that a fascist party could be elected to power in free, competitive elections. But that could never happen here in America, the oldest democracy in the world, could it? Now, the funny thing is, back in the 1920s, there was a book called It Can't Happen Here by Sinclair Lewis, and it does describe exactly how it could happen here, and I've read articles about the parallels between what Lewis described and events of today, but after reading this article, I'd never read the book, so I decided to go on Amazon, get myself a copy, and read it. So we're talking about the Holocaust and World War II, and shockingly, I am now going to read you a quote from a monster of the Nazi regime, Hermann Goering. Naturally, the common people don't want war, neither in Russia, nor in England, nor for that matter, in Germany. That is understood. But after all, it is the leaders of the country who determine the policy, and it is always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it is a democracy or a fascist dictatorship, or a parliament or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of their leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the peacemakers for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same in any country. So the response to that is courage. We all face that every day in our lives. I have to tell you, I face that in the New York State Assembly. There's a lot of pressure. I'm a member of the Democratic Party, and I'm not saying anything disparaging about the Democrats in particular, but we have 105 or so members, and there's pressure not to offend the leadership of the party in the Assembly. And I can remember one instance when I had decided to vote against the governor's education budget because I disagreed completely with the approach that he was taking. And importantly, I felt that my constituents would consider me a hypocrite if I voted for that budget because I ran for office on a strong platform of supporting public education. So I was sitting in the back of the chamber, and the leader of the Democrats' campaign organization came to me and said, "This is the Speaker's first budget. The Speaker really needs your vote." And I didn't think very long. I said, I made up my mind. I'm voting no, and I'm not changing. And I think that's the type of thing. Sometimes you do have to say no, even to colleagues when you think they're going in the wrong direction. We had a recent meeting and conference where I made some remarks that were dissenting from some of the leadership, and I considered afterwards, was that really a good idea? Is that going to help me get bills passed to benefit my constituents? And then I thought, no, those were things that absolutely had to be said. So that is a decision we all have to make. There's always a question. Not everything is an issue of principle, but we're all going to encounter issues of principle in our lives. So at this point, we had some members from the Loudonville Christian Church that won some awards here today, and that's right around the corner from where I live. So I want to close with some words from Martin Niemöller, who was a Lutheran minister. He started off in the Nazi regime, not as a supporter of the Nazis, but maybe not their harshest critic. And we're talking about the lessons of the Holocaust, and Reverend Niemöller, I think, expressed those lessons of the Holocaust better than anyone ever did in a very short poem. He said, and he was imprisoned later in his life by the Nazis. First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out, because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out, because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Thank you.
Well, I want to thank Phil for everything that he's been doing for us, culminating in tonight's presentation. And I want to thank the parents of and guardians of our winning students. I want to thank the teachers, and I want to thank the students, of course, as well as everyone else I've thanked before. I feel very comfortable here every year, and with friends and more friends every year, and thank you again. We hope you'll stay for a group photograph with the teachers and students and judges and anyone who wants to come up. Randy will be our photographer, and where do you want, maybe in front of the, up in front of the screen here. Anything blocking might not be the best thing. I just think people, I think would be better.
It's not a police lineup.
You know, if you double up, you get the shorter focusing. We don't do any pictures of dogs.
Somewhere else. More in the group. Okay, that's good. At least one would be the eyes open, okay.
Please bring me the parent release forms with your addresses on them, so that we can send you a DVD, and that will keep me out of jail, and I'll probably sleep better as well.
Looking at the camera, what a deal.
If you haven't signed it yet, just please take it out of the package and sign it and bring it up.